Hello, this is Junichiro Horikawa, and this is the 6th episode of VEX for Algorithmic Design. And the topic today is string in VEX. Now, first of all, let me explain what string is. String is a data format which can be used to store text. It can contain words and paragraphs and so on. And it is one of the general data format used in any kind of programming languages, not just in VEX, but in Python, C# or C++ and so on. Today we're looking at how we can deal with this string data inside Houdini together with the VEX. Now, first thing first, let's try to declare the string using VEX. Okay, so I'm going to create a geometry node, and inside I'm going to create a attribute node, attribute wrangle, I'm first going to set it as detail, and let's name this to declare. So let's try to create a really simple string data using this detail wrangle. Okay, so as we did in a variable episode, in order to create a string variables, you first type string, then type space, then set the name for the variable like val1. Then in order to create the string value as an initial, first you type 2 double quotations, and inside this double quotation you type any word that you want to set as a string data. So say hello Houdini, and you have just now declared a first string, which is a hello string, which is inside this val1 variable for the string data. Now let's also store this as a detail attribute by accessing to a string attribute name like val1 by writing like s at val1. So you have just created the detail attribute. Since you're under a detail run over, you are creating a string attribute named as val1, and by setting a equal with a value that you have just created right here, you are storing this value hello Houdini inside this attribute. So let's check this out by clicking this plus button, new pane tab, inspector, and geometry spreadsheet, and under a detail tab you should be able to see the variable hello Houdini variable 1, which has stored hello Houdini as a string data, is being stored as an attribute in detail. So let's try to declare a string in a bit different way than the previous one. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to create the variable for the string, which is pretty much the same as previously. First you type string and space and name the variable, and in order to declare in another way, you can also use single quotation like this. 2 single quotation, and inside a single quotation you can type a similar word like ciao Houdini, and this still works. So you can use either double quotation or single quotation in order to create a string like these. Let's try this out by checking under a attribute. I'm going to create the attribute called val2 and store val2 to that attribute. Okay, and here you go. So you can use either double quotation or single quotation when you want to declare a Houdini, or you want to declare string data inside of VEX. In order to express a string inside Houdini, one of the popular way is to use font node to draw a text inside a viewport. Okay, so let's try how to use this. Let's see how to use this. Now, in order to draw a font what you need to do is type text inside this text field. So if you type ABC, and you'll get this word which is written under this text. Now, in order to bring up the value that you have defined inside a wrangle, a detail wrangle, or any attribute wrangles to a font node, you need to access to an attribute data from this text field. Now, as we've seen in channel episode, what we can do here in order to communicate with the detail wrangle, detail attribute, is to use a expression functions. And you can check what kind of expression function you can use for the channel, like this kind of text field, by going into a document page for Houdini named as expression functions. And there is several functions, but the one that we want to use is the one that can access to a detail attribute. So let's search for detail. There are several types of detail related functions. One says return the value of the detail attribute. That looks correct, but actually in order to retrieve the string values from a detail attribute, what we want to use is this one, saying returns the string value of detail attribute. So using this one, instead of detail s, without s, you're getting a number value like 0, 2, or 0.3 or something like that. By using s after detail, you'll be able to get a string value from an attribute. So this is the one we want to use. And if we see the parameters, we need to provide 1 and 2. And the first one is name of the node, and the second one is the name of the attribute. So let's try to access this. Now, the name of the node is declare, and the name of the attribute is the attribute inside the detail is called val1 or val2. So let's ask access to this val1 detail attribute. Val1, and you see that there is a bit of problem. It is using font, and by typing this expression, you are saying the expression as it is, and it doesn't really using this as an expression, but it's just reads it as a string itself. So in order to use this as an expression, you have to say that this is actually a expression that you can evaluate, not the string. This is not the string itself. Now, in order to express this as an expression, instead of using it as a straight string, you need to enclose this with a back quote letter, which is this one, which is this letter, and this letter at the end. And I forgot to set it as detail s. Okay, so by doing it, you'll be able to access to a string attribute, which is inside this declare attribute called val1. Now let's also access to val2. I'm going to just copy this. Oops. Copy all the lines and say accessing to val2 instead of val1. And voila, you are able to access both strings in one channel. So this is one of the popular way to access to a attribute string data from a font node, which are stored as from a VEX code. Yeah, I use this technique a lot. Now, when declaring a string, sometimes you want to use some special characters, and let's see how you could do that. I'm going to copy this and name this as special character. Maybe I'm gonna copy this font as well, and And let's say, first of all, I want to make this first string a multi-line string. Currently, as you can see, this is a single line string, but in order to create it as a multi-line, you cannot just enter like this, which will just give you an error. But what you need to do is to insert a special character in between hello and Houdini with a special character which defined as a new line, which can be expressed as \n. By typing like this, going into a attribute for detail, you'll be able to see some special characters written like here, which act as a new line. So to see that works, let's also view that inside font2 by using a font2, accessing to a special character variables. Like this, and as you can see, you'll be able to you are now having a multi-line word using this special character \n. Backslash works as an escape word, so combining backslash with several different letters like n, you'll be able to create some special effects for the text. Now let me show you another examples. If you say you have a child Houdini with the double quotation first, and then say if you want to show the double quotation as the one of the string value as well. So in order to show up inside using this font node, the double quotation itself as well. To do that, if you just try to include double quotation like this, then we'll just give you an error because this double quotation is already preserved as a string declaring function inside of VEX. So you cannot just type like this in order to use this as a string value, but in order to convert this double quotation into a string, what you need to do is to say \double quotation, and this will convert a double quotation so that you can use it inside a string declaration. So saying double \double quotation, and as a result you'll be able to show this as a string also under the attribute and using a font node like these. Now there are reasons why there are two different ways in order to declare a quotation, in order to declare a string. One was using double quotation, one was single quotation. So another way to show this double quotation as a string, you can also just use single quotation in order to declare a string instead of double quotation. So the first single quotation acts as declaring a string, and a double quotation inside the string can be just a string that you want to show up. So this still works. And same for a single quotation. If you want to show the single quotation as a string value, you can enclose the word with a double quotation, and this still also works. So you can use either a double quotation or single quotation if you want to use either one of the letters, or you can use escape in order to work with these in order to show up the single or double quotation. Now I'm not sure why, but you cannot use double quotation together with the single quotation declaration like this. It will just give you an error. So when you use a escape letter, just try to declare the word using a double quotation like this. Now The escape will enable you to use both single and double quotation inside the declaration. So if you want to change the last single quotation to double, this still works. So preferably you want to remember to use this back quotation way, backslash way, escape way, in order to use the special characters like quotation or so on. Right, so that this is one of the example, another example for the special characters. Now there are several other special characters which you can use with backslash, like with the backslash to backslash you'll be able to view backslash itself as a string, or backslash t will give you a tab, backslash b will give you a backspace, and so on. So you can search it with a escape Python characters and so on. It is pretty similar to Python language as well, how the escape key works. So check that out. The next thing I would like to show you is how you can format values into a string values, like converting float values into string, or converting several types of data into a string. Okay, so let's first copy this, and I'm gonna name this formatting maybe. And for the font 3, I'm going to, okay, now seems like it has been changed automatically. Right, that's good. Under font 3, the attribute, the node name has automatically been changed. Right, that looks good. Now going to the formatting attribute node, what I want to do is say I want to view this integer as a string first. Okay, so I'm going to create, first I'm going to say I'm going to create a val1 string add variable like this. Then first thing I would like to do is to convert this integer into a string. Now you cannot just type 40 like this, because it will just give you an error because this is not a string. Maybe it's better you have another variable for integer, like int value equal 40, like this. Now we have already done how we can convert integer into a string in a variable episode. But to do that, you can use a function called i2a, which convert integer into a string. So by using this function i2a, you can convert this integer value into a string, and as a result, you'll be able to show the numbers as a string. But what if you have a float value like 50.34? Now this itself cannot be used, this float value cannot be used with i2a because this is not an integer. So if you try to say i2a, it will just round up. It will trim out the float values 0.4 and just give you an integer value. And there are no such functions like f2a, which converts the float value into a string. So you need to use a kind of a different functions, which I have also shown you on the variable episode. But to do that, you need to use sprintf function, and let's see how this function works. Now this is the document page for the sprintf function, which says formats a string like printf but returns the result as a string instead of printing it. So there are similar functions called printf, which writes the word inside the parenthesis to a console, but by using before the printf, by having s before the printf, by saying s printf, you'll be able to use the word or use the values that it's written inside a parameter as a string. And in order to use this printf, you need to type two parameters. One is the format and one is the value that you want to convert. And let's see what format is. Going into a printf VEX function page, you'll be able to see that there are several types of formats you can use in order to convert the value into string. And G stands for general, can be convert any kind of data like integers, float, vectors, or F, E, or capital E can convert float, vectors, and so on. D or I can convert integers. S is just passing string as it is, and so on. So let's try to use some of the format to convert the values, such as float values or maybe a vector values as well. So the first parameter is the format. If you want to convert this float value, the format that I could use is maybe G or F. Maybe I can try to use F for this one. So say %f. So this is the format in order to convert the second value into a string. And for the second value, I'm going to type fval, which is this value. And as a result, you'll be able to convert this 50.4 into a string using sprintf. Now the reason why you have these small numbers at the end of the float value that you have just shown as a string, converted as a string, is because of the precision for this float data type inside of VEX. In default, the float value inside of VEX is treated as a 32-bit float value. So there is some limitations using when you use the float values. So this is kind of a error value when you use float values inside of VEX. So you cannot kind of avoid it unless you're using 32-bit. But if you try to use the 64-bit float instead, then you'll be able to have more higher precisions, and in that case you might be able to avoid having this small number errors, have much smaller error values than the float. And in order to use a 64-bit float value instead of 32-bit float value using Wrangle, there is a way to do that by accessing into a binding tab, then go into a bottom, and you see this VEX precision tab right here. And currently it is set as auto, but you can change this to 64-bit experimental, and as a result, by changing it, you'll be able to convert all the values, all the data type that has been set inside this VEX as a 64-bit, including integer as well. And as a result, you'll be able to have less error values. And then when you convert this float to string, you'll have 0 as we want it. Okay. So that's kind of a technique. If you want to have more higher precisions, one of the ways you can convert the precision into 64-bit. Now there is also a downside when you use 64-bit. Since 64-bit has more precisions, when you do like a lot of calculations, mathematical calculations, the calculation time will get increased by using higher precisions. So try to see if you really need that kind of high precisions. In most of the cases, using 62-bit is just fine. But if you want a high precisions, maybe 64-bit works for you in some cases. Right. Now, this was how you can draw integer and float. But what if you want to show both values in one letter? Now, using sprintf function is useful when it comes to combine different types of data together into one letter or one word or one string line. Such as combining integer and string, combining integer and float and vectors and so on. To do that, you can type as much data format as possible inside this first parenthesis, and by a number of format you type right here, you can increase the number of datas by adding additional commas together with additional values. Let me give you an example. Let's say you want to have, say, vector vval set 1, 2, 3. You want to show this vector value as a string, also this float value, also this string value. Let's say percent or hours. So I want to show you what I want to do. First, show this as a string, then show this float value as a string next, and then last I want to show this as a string on the last. Okay, to do that, I can still use this sprintf function. Now currently you have three different types of data. One is vector, one is float, and one is string. So go back to the page for the data format. The first value that you want to use is vector, and for the vector you can use either F, E, or capital E. Maybe I can use F. And the second value is the float, which you can use F again. And for the string you can use this %s. So in that case you can type %f space %f and %s. So you have now three formatting letters. Now you can combine them with comma or any characters as well between these format words. I'm just going to split it with the space for now. You don't even need space actually. Okay, so this was the first parameter, and the second parameter I need to type three values for the first float format, second float format, and third string format. To do that you need to separate with commas. Now for the first float format I'm going to type this vval, which I want to show up. And for the second float format I'm going to use this fval. And for the third one I'm going to use this sval for the string format. And as a result, let's show this up in using this font. I'm going to copy this and access to the val3. And I have to also store this to a detail attribute named as val3. And as a result, you'll be able to get three different format data into one string. So the first one is the vector value, second one is the float value, and third one is the string value. And in between those formats you can type any kind of word, like say comma works, like this one, or you can use like additional letters like underscore, and this could also works. So when it comes to combine different types of data, sprintf works pretty well. You can also type special characters like \n to create a new line like these. So when you're dealing with a tons of strings, remember you can use this printf for a really flexible way, using various variables like these. And when it comes to join several string values together, there is a simple ways to do that using a additional operations. So let's do that. I'm going to copy these two nodes again to the right, and I'm going to name this operation. Okay, and check that inside the font 4 all the node name has also been changed to the operation. That's good. Now get it inside the Rango node. What I'm going to do, I'm going to first create two string values. Okay, so I'm going to delete the val3, and for the val1 I'm going to type like hello space, and for the second val2 I'm going to type Houdini. What I'm going to do is to combine these two strings together as one line, and that is pretty simple. You just need to use a operation called addition. So for this one, you say val1 plus val2, which will give you a single string line combining these two strings together. So let's have this as an attribute value by accessing to a attribute val called val, and store this variable inside an attribute called val. Alright, let's go back to the font and show this val attribute. I'm gonna rename this to val, and here you go. So in most of the cases when you want to join strings together, you use this plus additional operations between different strings. You can do many additions as possible. Like if you want to add comma in between, you type like this, and this works like this. So yeah, so in most of the cases you use this added additional operation for the string when you want to join it. If you want to join like different kinds of data types other than strings, then you go back to use this printf, and this is more flexible. Now next I want to show you how you can access to a characters within the string that you have just created. Say you want to access to the third letter inside the string, or the letters from 3rd to 6th and so on. So in order to do that, you need to access it. There is a way to access these characters using a string, and it is pretty much similar to that of array. So let's try to do that. I'm going to copy this again, and for this one I'm going to say access, and I am going to create a string, the single string named as val, and let's say hello Houdini, and let's try to access to one of the characters within this string value. If you want to access to the third character's L, you count the index. You first count the index in which index this character is stored inside this string. And when it comes to count the index, it is pretty much similar to what you did in array. So you can kind of think string as a array of single character letters. So in this case, each H, E, L, L, O space and so on can seen as a single data, single letter data, in this case a character data. And this itself can be seen as an array of characters. So in that case, the third L can be accessed by accessing to a first, second, and third characters, which is in, if it's array, the first letter can be counted as 0, second is 1, and the third will be 2. So you can access to the third letter by accessing to the index 2. And in order to access to the index 2, it is also pretty similar to an array. You just say square bracket 2, and you'll be able to access to the third characters. And the character that you have access can be retrieved as a string. So create another string called val1 and bring this character at index 2 stored inside val1. Now let's check that out. To show up in a font, I'm going to create a val1 attribute for the detail and store this val1 inside that attribute. Then show this up in a font, val1, and you see a character L has been retrieved. Let's change the value to different index. Like if you want to use this H for Houdini, this will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 index. So index 6, you'll be able to access this H character like this. Now you can also retrieve multiple strings out of a one string, not just single characters like this, but say if you want to get a value between H to U, so HOU. So in this case, the index is in between 6 to 8. Now in that case, you can access it by typing like val 6 colon 9. The 9 means 9 is the one index added to the last index you want to retrieve. So this is the 8th index, so you want to add 1 to that to create it as, set it as 9. And as a result, you'll be able to get value HOU. So let's check that out. Create a val2 attribute, val2, and let's show this up in a font called val2. And voila. Here's so this is how you can access to the string values using an accessor with a square bracket, pretty similar to an array. Now when it comes to algorithmic design, you don't do much of these kind of operations for string that much using VEX, but one of the purpose this can be worked, one of the situations that I can think of using this operation is when you use like when you have a DNA code which stores all the characters to define what to do next based on the information in the string. In that case, accessing to each characters from a string works pretty well. So you gotta remember this as well. Now in the last, I want to show you more string functions, which is a bit related to an array as well. So let's do this. I'm going to copy the wrangle. I'm gonna name the wrangle name into string array. Okay, and make sure in the font the node name has been updated as well. If not, you can just type it with the same name right here. Okay, now I'm first going to delete all the values right here inside a detail wrangle. I mean the attribute wrangle node. Okay, and first thing I would like to do is to create a array of string by declaring the name as vowels, and by using square bracket you'll be able to create an array for string like this. And if you remember, you can declare an array by using a curly bracket, and inside a curly bracket type as much data as you want. So let's say I'm going to create 5 array values A, B, C, D, and E to make it simple. So currently I have 5 string values stored in one array called vowels. Now there is a situations when you want to combine all those strings inside the array into a single string, and there is just a function to do this. And you can also specify a spacer in between the string, like if you want to insert a comma in between the string to create it as one string, and that is called a function called join. Now if you go to the VEX function page inside a document, you can go that by going into a Houdini 18 document, search for VEX right here, and under the page there is a page called VEX function, and under a string categories, maybe you can type string to search, and at some point you'll be able to see a string. Oh yeah, so this is the string categories. So all these functions works related to strings, and inside right here there's a function called join. If you go there, you see that it says concatenate all the strings inside the array to form a single string. So you can insert a array inside a parameter to combine these into one string, and as an additional parameter you can also specify a spacer, what kind of characters to insert in between the values which is from the array. So let's try to use this. So the result value that you're going to get is a single string. So first let's create a single string attribute named as join val. Okay, and use join function to insert 2 parameters. The first parameter will be this one, array of string, so vowels, and the second parameter is the spacer. Let's try to create it without any spacer. So by just typing double quotation 2 times, you'll be able to just type no string. Okay, and store that into a detail attribute called val1 this, and as a result you'll be able to see a joined string value ABCDE into one string shown up as a font value. Now if you set some spacer for this one, like comma, you'll be able to get a comma in between each string value. So this is pretty useful when you want to create like a CSV files out of an array. This is pretty handy, right? Maybe we're going to use this later on. Try to deal with external files. That was the join. Now let's try to use another kind of functions. Now there is a situations that you already have a string and you want to search for some characters within a string. Like let's say you are searching for a character B or letter B, comma C. And you want to know where it is stored inside a string, meaning what is the index of that character or letter or word. So to do that, there is a just functions to do that, which is called as find. And the function find works both for string and it could also work in an array as well. So we're gonna try with array later on as well. First, let's try to use this with a string. So to use this, we need two parameters. The first parameter is the string that you're searching to, and the second parameter is a string values that you want to search for. So in this case, a string A, B, C, D, D, E will be stored right here, and the value that you want to search for, which is this B, is stored in the second parameter. Let's see this. So and as a result, what you get is the index number as an integer where those string is stored, positioned. Okay, so let's do this. Int val1 index. I'm going to create a integer variable like val1 index and use find function. Okay, and the first parameter will be this single string, which is stored as join val. So join val, and the second parameter is going to be the letters that I want to search for, or the word that I want to search for. So let's try with B, which I want to search for this one, and see what kind of result that I get. Okay, so as a result, you'll be able to get an integer value. So let's add it as a detail attribute to check that value out. val1 index. I'm going to create a attribute called val1 index and store this variable val1 index, which is retrieved using this find function. Okay, and let's go to the detail wrangle, and the value that I get is 2. So this is the index number where the B is stored. And if you check the index from A should be 0, comma should be 1, and B should be 2, so this seems correct. If I change this to C, then what you should get is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's check this out, and it looks correct. Now what if I type any values that is not included in this string? Let's say F. In that case, what you get is negative value. So whenever you have negative value by using find function, it means that it couldn't find anything. It couldn't find a character that you were looking for. Okay, what if you want to search for more than single characters like B, C, B, C, and as a result, what you get is the first index value of that character. So it is getting the index character of the B. So this is how the find function works together with the string. Now you can also use this find function for an array as well. So let's try this using find for this array, for this string array. Okay, so let's go back to the document and see what kind of parameter that I need in order to search for array values. If you look at it, the first parameter will be the array value. The second parameter will be the data that you want to search for, which is inside the array. So pretty similar to string. And what you get as an output is also an integer index. Okay, so I'm going to create another integer value. And for this one, I'm going to say val2 index and say find vowels, which is this string array. And let's say I want to search for a B, which is stored in the second index, which means 0, 1, index 1. And store it under a detail attribute called val2index. Let's see if I got the value correctly. And here you go. What you get is the index number, index value for an array. This one. If I type it to C, what you get is the value 2, which means 0, 1, 2, so it is correct. It is stored in a third element. If you type F, which is not contained inside an array, you get a negative value again, which means you don't have that kind of value inside an array. So it's pretty similar to define works pretty similar to string and array, like you can see. Right. So define function can be used in many cases, in many purposes. I think you're going to use this a lot when you deal with a string to search for specific values, especially when you're dealing with like external data from retrieved from like text files and so on. Now let's look at another functions. Now this time what I want to show you is to convert the string into an array. So let's say you want to convert this a, b, c, d, e into an array, back to an array. So previously we have converted the array into a string like this, but this time I want to convert this single string into an array, back into an array like these. To do that, the function that we can use is called split. This one. Go into it. In order to use this, what you can do is to first type, you can type several types of parameters. The one we could use a lot is this second parameter. The first parameter will be the string that you want to split, and the second parameter will be the separators, which characters to use to split the string into an array, and as a result you get a string array. In this case, each letter is separated using comma, so we can use comma as a separator to convert this into an array. So every letters which is separated by this comma will be become one of the data inside an array. Okay, so as a result, what you get is the string array. So let's first declare a empty array like this, then use a function called split, and inside a split you need to define two parameters. First parameter is the string that you want to split, so this join val will be the value that you want to split, which is equivalent to this string right here shown up using a font. So join val, and the second parameter will be the separator that you want to use to separate the string in, and in this case the comma should be the one. So type comma like this. Okay, and as a result you'll be able to get a splitted string as a string array. So let's have this show up in a attribute wrangle or detail wrangle by accessing to s square bracket at and say val 1 val 1 vals1. I'll just say vals1. And or just split val, maybe split val. Store this split val. Okay, I'm missing t right here. And let's see, going into a detail attribute, and as a result, I am seeing this array constructed as an array from this val1 a b c d e, which is similar to this one. Okay, so this is how you can convert a single string into an array, which is also used in a lot of cases when you're dealing with external text files, like CSV files in most cases. Now finally, I want to show you some functions how you can get the total length of the string. And to do that, you can use the similar functions used in array, which is called len. If you go to the document page for the function and search for the lengths, maybe search for len, and this is the function. Now it says you can retrieve the length of an array, but you can also use for a string as well. So if you want to get the total length of the string, what you can do is to first create an integer variable like val1 len, and then use len function, and inside the len store this join val. And let's check that out by setting it as a integer attribute for the detail val1 len val1 len. Let's go to the geometry spreadsheet to see the total length of the string. It says 9, so in total you have 9 letters for this string. Now, as I told you, the len also works for an array, so let's try that out as well. val2 len, I'm gonna use length for this array vals, which is this value. So this is the array of string, and inside this len you can type vals, and you can still retrieve the total number of values inside the array. Now, since the array doesn't include a comma, so it only has characters A, B, C, D, so total numbers of the characters are 5. For the val1 len, it is including the comma as a letter, so in total you have 9. But function-wise, the length for string and arrays works pretty much the same. So this is the basic of string, how you can deal with string using VEX. Maybe compared to number values, you don't do this kind of string operations that much, but there is many cases you want to deal with string and programmatically. So it is still important to remember how you can do that. Okay. Alright, so in the next topic, I would like to talk about one of the really important aspect of programming, which is called looping. So in the next topic, I'm going to deal with for loop, how you can create a loop using VEX, which is going to be a really exciting stuff to know about. If you know looping, you can do a lot of stuff. You can start to do a lot of stuff using it. And it is also pretty much related to geometrical operation as well. Okay, so this is it for 6th episode. The topic was string. And thank you for watching. And if you like the video, please try to subscribe. I'm going to continue doing this VEX for algorithm design series. And see you next time. Thank you.